For this lesson, I'm going to show you guys how to create a goblet using the Lathe modifier. First thing we need to do is I have an image I'm going to use as a reference, so I want to create a template with that. So I'm going to go ahead and create a plane. And we only need, since we're just using this as a reference, we only need one segment by one segment. I always tend to make my template square just so I can be sure that I'm not messing up the proportions. So let's just make a perfect square here, and I want to center it in the middle. So I'm going to set these all to 0. I'm going to go into my materials. I'm going to click on this button next to diffuse and select bitmap. I'm going to find the image. And I'm going to drag it to the geometry. Now remember, you always have to select show shaded material in viewport to be able to see the textures in the viewport. That is good. Now I need to freeze this so I can make sure I'm not messing it up. But when you see that when I try to freeze it now that the image disappears. Reason for that is because I need to select the object and go to object properties and uncheck show frozen in gray. This is just a function that will, if you freeze an object, it'll remove the textures, which we don't want in this case. So I'm going to hit OK and freeze it again. Okay, let's make this into shaded so I can see it. I'm going to just deal with the front view. I'm going to select the viewport and hit Alt-W to zoom in. And basically what I want to do is I want to create a cutaway of this cup. Since the lathe tool just basically takes geometry and kind of spins it on a specific axis, I only need to create a very small section of it with a spline. So I'm going to go to Create, I'm going to go to Shapes and Line. And here is where I am just going to start tracing along the edge here. If you click once and let go, it creates straight lines, as so. But if I want to create curved lines, as I do here, I can just click and drag. And I'm going to go ahead and keep tracing. And like I said, I want to create just a very small slice of this. So I'm going to, and it's very important that you get this dialog box. If you do not, it means you have an open spline and the lathe modifier probably won't work. So you want to make sure you have that. Okay, so now I'm going to, I don't really need this anymore, so I'm going to unfreeze it and then hide it. And this is a little difficult to see, so I'm going to make it a lighter color. So you can see I have like a very a small section of this. I want to edit it a little bit just to kind of clean up some of these edges. So I'm going to right click, say convert to editable spline. And then I can go in and make some tweaks. This edge is a bit curved, so I'm just going to right click and say smooth. I'll switch to Bezier so I can adjust this a little bit more. Okay, it's pretty accurate. So now that we have the spline laid out, we can go ahead and add the modifier. So I have it selected, And I'm going to go to the modifier list and select Lathe. Now here it's a little difficult to tell what's going on, and that's because it just kind of made some assumptions about where I want this to kind of pivot. So what I want to do is just to open the drop down menu for Lathe and select the axis. What this is going to do is allow me to change at what point it spins on this axis. So it looks about right. Let's turn that other image on so I can use that as a guide. So that's pretty close right there. I'm gonna hide this again. So take a close look at it. So you can see it's looking pretty solid. You know, it's a little, these edges are a little rough, so what I can do is select it, and I can go to segments, and I'm going to bump this up to like 32, which is twice as much. So obviously that's a lot smoother. So that's basically the gist of how you would apply the lathe modifier. From here you can just right click and say convert to editable poly, and you can add some imperfections and dings and dents, either through editing the geometry or having some fun with textures and such.